Locking people away in the United States is big business, and that's the topic of today's No Filter. Recently, there was a report by something known as In the Public Interest, and what they wanted to tell Americans about is that oftentimes when you see these for-profit prisons in these states, first of all, they're not really private. They're paid by the taxpayers, and in their contracts with the states that they operate in, they have something known as inmate quotas. Inmate quotas specify that they need to have a certain percentage of beds full in their facilities in order to carry out the contract with the state. Now, the crazy thing about this is oftentimes those inmate quotas can be up to 90 to 100%. And if the state fails to fill those beds, that means that the taxpayers have to still pay for those empty beds within the facility, almost as if there was some ghost inmate laying in there. Now, there's a really big problem with that because, of course, it's not really saving states money, and to top it off, it's actually giving people, politicians specifically, an incentive to keep pushing tough-on-crime legislation and tough-on-crime laws. Now, I want to read you guys some of the statistics that they found in this report. It turns out that there are 3 privately run prisons in Arizona that have contracts that require 100% inmate occupancy, so the state is obligated to keep its prisons filled to capacity. Otherwise, it has to pay the private company for any unused beds. So in Arizona alone, there are 3 for-profit prisons. And of course, for those of you who are unaware who the big players are in this story, you have Corrections Corporation of America, and you also have GEO Group. Some more interesting information from the report indicates that Arizona, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Virginia are locked in contracts with the highest occupancy guarantee requirements, with all quotas requiring between 95 and 100% occupancy. And it just continues and it gets worse. Though crime has dropped by 1/3 in the past decade, an occupancy requirement covering 3 for-profit prisons has forced taxpayers in Colorado to pay an additional $2 million. This is taxpayer money that is being used to lock Americans up. And let me just say one thing. I think that there's a huge misconception when it comes to the people that are serving time in these facilities. Oftentimes people think that they deserve to be behind bars. But the reality is, a lot of times they are undocumented immigrants that should probably be deported instead of arrested and detained in the country for a few years before they get deported. Or in a lot of cases, they're nonviolent drug offenders. So we're wasting our resources to make these so-called private companies tremendously wealthy. Now, I was really upset to find that in California, this is becoming an increasingly hideous problem. California has a big problem when it comes to overpopulation in our prisons. So as a result, Governor Jerry Brown has decided, instead of following a court order that indicates that he needs to release some inmates, he has decided to transfer them to a for-profit prison. So just to give you some numbers on that, California has already reduced the prison population by about 46,000 inmates. However, the court order that Jerry Brown received indicates that he needs to release another 9,600 inmates. Instead of allowing them to go free, he has decided to sign a 5-year contract with a for-profit prison company so he can transfer those inmates to the for-profit prison, essentially spending taxpayer money to make those companies wealthy and to ensure that these people don't get released early, even though the vast majority of them haven't committed any real violent crime and are no threat to society. And I should really clarify that. I think that there's a lot of fear-mongering when it comes to some of these inmates, and we are the number 1 country when it comes to locking people away. We lock away more people than any other industrialized country on this planet. And that is a real problem because you incentivize locking people away. These companies make money off of it. And for those of you who wonder where these for-profit prisons even came from in the first place, in the 1980s, when the Reagan administration was very, very harsh on people that got caught with drugs, all of a sudden, our prison population shot up. We didn't know what to do with them. It was over capacity. So all of a sudden, GEO Group and CCA realized, hey, there are profits to be made by locking up these nonviolent drug offenders. So the for-profit prisons started popping up all over the place. And now all of a sudden, we have this system that keeps pushing this war on drugs and keeps pushing the criminalization of activity that people should get rehabilitated for, not locked away for. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed my No Filter today, and I will see you next week.